Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest installment of my Changing Lives podcast and Substack Lives. Looking forward to today's conversation, especially. We are going to be talking about the divine masculine and the divine feminine and how we each have both within us and why both are important. For those who aren't already familiar with my work, I'm Wendy Gordon, and my Substack is Changing Lives. And it's about mental and spiritual health. I'm a former pastor who is now a mental and spiritual health writer, speaker, and coach. You can find out more on my Substack page, which is wendygordon.substack.com. And I spell it Wendy with an I, so WENDIGORDON.substack.com. And welcome and thanks for watching. And to those who watch the replay later, I hope this will be enlightening for you and helpful. And with that, I will let my guest, Katie Bryan, introduce herself.
Hi, I am Katie Bryan, and I am feeling a bit nervous right now, so I'm just going to presence that. And this is like my first live, and I'm really excited, and I'm really feeling a lot of big things about this. And so, what do I want to tell you about myself? Okay, well, I am a person on this planet trying to figure it out. Right. I don't have answers. I don't have good paths forward. I'm just a human on this planet trying to figure it out, working through my own way of looking at the world, and coming into more and more understanding as I continue to grow and evolve and figure it out and move forward. I'm really excited about this topic particularly. It's something that I've been learning about for the last, when I was thinking about it, 6 years, Wendy, 6 years.
Wow.
I've been learning about this topic. And if I want to go back even further, I can talk about my Catholic upbringing and being exposed to the divine from the perspective of the Catholic teachings, the Catholic way of looking at the world, at the way of looking at what is divine and everything like that, and feeling a little bit out of alignment with that. So then turning towards kind of nothingness for a while, right? Like I figured if I had beliefs that fell outside of what I was taught growing up, and I didn't feel like I had a lot of permission to explore into those beliefs and to look into those beliefs in a lot of ways. So I just kind of decided to believe nothing for a long time. And in so doing, that allowed me to kind of explore a little bit freely and kind of look at, well, I know what that belief is. I know what that system looks like. And there are things that, okay, there's really good messages here. And then there are things that just really don't resonate with me. And so what does resonate with me? And so finding myself in that question and in that line of inquiry, I find myself here today with all of you.
That's great. And yeah, my journey has been very different. I was kind of all in on the Christian Protestant religion in which I was raised, so much so that I went on to become a pastor. And that was my career until 2020. And I discovered that even in my progressive denomination, my spirituality was just too broad to be confined to Christianity. I never believed that, accepting Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior was the only path to heaven. I didn't even believe that a hell existed, still don't. And I gradually moved away from seeing Jesus as the only Son of God to seeing Jesus as a wise spiritual guide, along with the Buddha, along with Gandhi, along with all kinds of other gods and goddesses and ordinary humans who did extraordinary things and were very spiritual people. And just within the last 6 months or so, I've realized how limited I was by only seeing the divine as masculine, as God the Father. Although the Holy Spirit is feminine, when it's talked about, it's normally either called it or just incorporated as masculine, part of the Trinity. And I realized how harmful that was to me, to my self-esteem, and to countless other women. I started reading Megan Watterson's work. She's also on Substack, Megan with 2 G's and Watterson with 2 T's. But anyway, she wrote a wonderful book called Mary Magdalene Revealed, and another one called The Girl Who Baptized Herself, both of which helped to introduce me further into the scripture readings that were not included in the Bible, which of course, which books got included was decided by a group of straight white men. So women's voices were silenced and suppressed, so much so that one pope in the 4th century ordered those texts burned. And there were only a few copies from some monks that couldn't bear to burn them, buried in caves and elsewhere, that have been discovered over the last 160 years or so, and people are taking a fresh look at them. And there's some exciting scholarship around that. But anyway, for me personally, I was really drawn to Mary Magdalene because, for one, she was vilified and falsely claimed to be a prostitute as a way to discredit her, when she was the first person that Jesus appeared to after his resurrection in the Bible. And she was given a commission to go and tell the male disciples that Jesus had risen. And so that, of course, has been downplayed in the whole argument that because Jesus was male, only men can be pastors. And because God is male, women are supposed to submit to their husbands or to other male authority figures, has done countless damage throughout the centuries. And so, like I said, I've just become aware of that recently and wanted to explore the divine feminine more and embrace that side of myself more. So that's kind of how I got here. And I think it's important to note that, we're talking about the divine feminine more now because the divine masculine has been ascendant in our society and our culture and has been so dominant. And it's a wounded form of the divine masculine that has actually been dominant and toxic. Divine masculine in and of itself is co-equal with divine feminine. We all contain both. We need both. Both are positive attributes. It's just that one has dominated the other to such a degree that they're out of balance. So Katie, I'll let you share a little bit more, because you're more of an expert than I am on the attributes of the divine feminine versus the divine masculine.
Yeah. Okay. So I think the first thing to kind of start wrapping our head around in this conversation is that we're talking about qualities, we're talking about archetypes, we're talking about energies, we're talking about the way that all of us embody different traits and qualities. Okay. So if you think about traits like, I'm going to click over. If you think about traits like unconditional love, understanding, nurturing, tenderness, kindness, intuition, creativity, feelings, like, emotions. If you think about traits like confidence, inner strength, responsibility, focus, logic, support, stability, direction, you think about those traits and you're just like, oh, those are just traits, right? But they have energies to them. One side is energetically masculine. It's more of that outward energy. And one of those is feminine. It's more of that inward energy. And we all have both. Regardless of what body type we exist within, we all contain both sets of energies. If you think about the fact that we all contain both sets of DNA from both of our parents and their parents and their parents and their parents, we are a living embodiment of the expression of both the masculine and the feminine. We are also in that there are, because of the ways that we have been indoctrinated into an idea that the quote unquote masculine traits are the desirable traits. We laud our confidence, our inner strength, our responsibility. We laud our courage and discipline and logic, and everything is like linear, and it's all of this. And we exist within this context where those traits are put on a pedestal. Those traits are put into the idea that we want more of this and we take this, what we have labeled feminine, what we have called feminine, and we take that and we've learned to vilify it over time, like you were talking about, with the way that the books of the Bible were written and the way that they were introduced into the Bible. All of these things that don't fall within what the predominant culture, which has been a very wounded masculine culture, which when you take the wounded masculine traits, looks like being a perpetrator, abusing power, putting dominance and control over. It looks like being competitive. It looks like being unsupportive or avoiding, critical and abusive, right? That's where you're in that wounded energy, and you can see that everywhere, right? But if you take a look at the wounded feminine, because again, when you've got a wounded system projecting all of its control over anything that falls outside of that rigid structure, it creates wounding on the other side. So when you look at our wounded feminine, the energy of being a victim, the energy of being powerless, the energy of being weak, leaning on manipulation, withholding, being needy and codependent, those energies are in that wounded realm. So we've got these higher expressions of the masculine energies and the feminine energies, and we've got these really wounded expressions. And if we don't have within ourselves the ability to look inward, which is a very feminine trait, going inward, being receptive, being soft, being within, those are all feminine traits, qualities of the divine energy that is feminine. In the divine energy that is masculine, taking all of those internal traits, that introspection, that going within, that doing that work, and then take that and channel that into the real world, into the external world, that's how we're using both our qualities of masculine and feminine. It is not one or the other. It is not some people only have this and some people only have this because they have genitals that exist on the outside or the inside. It's not that. Everybody has all of these energies. Everybody can embody all of these energies. And the wounding happens when we are taught by society, by parents, by peers, by the world at large, that we only get to embody or work with certain energies because of what our external presentation looks like. So I happen to have a lot of very dominant masculine qualities, but I exist in a female body. So my life growing up, my role models for what I could look like were these: you have to be a wife, you have to be a mother, you have to have babies, you have to, clean the house and cook the things and do the things. And none of that felt good or right for me. I was a tomboy. I was rough and tumble. I wanted to be dirty. I wanted to be loud and adventurous and do all these things. But I was told that I couldn't. And so over time, I didn't. And I didn't embody those qualities for myself. And I became increasingly more disconnected, increasingly more wounded, increasingly more in pain, and had no outlet for it, because all the places I would go to say, hey, I'm having this pain. I'm depressed. I'm anxious. I have all this body pain. And I'm going to these very linear, very logical, very structured, very disciplined, very westernized and colonialized points of view in the medical the Western medical establishment, all of those things. And they're telling me, oh, it's all in your head. There's nothing wrong with you. You're fine. You're too young to feel that. You don't, right? Like, and I'm giving all of these ways of kind of, my internal experience never matched what was happening on the external. And I was frustrated. I was angry. I didn't know what to do about it. And everything that I was told to do about it was to suppress it, to deny it, to disavow it, right? And that doesn't work. And you can see in society today how disavowing our feminine, actively hating our feminine, has turned us into the culture that we have right now. And we can also see how the feminine has been, we're not sitting still, guys. Like, I mean, we're here because the feminine is like, no, we aren't doing that. Like, that doesn't work for us. And we're not staying in our wounded energy. Like, we need to do our work of healing. And so we're coming in and we're doing our work of healing. So the feminine energies have been healing, have been rising in response to these very, very wounded masculine energies that have been controlling and suppressing for so long. And so now I personally feel we have reached this critical tipping point where enough of our divine feminine, because again, we have it in all of us, right? This is, the men have it, the women have it, the non-binaries have it, everybody has it, okay? Enough of the divine feminine has risen that we've reached this critical turning point, and you're now hearing people talk about, oh, the rising of the matriarchy and all of these things. With that tipping point, what's happening in my perspective is that the healed feminine is now turning to the wounded masculine and saying, come here, we got you. We'll hold you while you go through this next part, because this next part's going to be hard and scary. We've already been through it. We just undid our healing, right? Like, we spent years in healing, right? Breaking out of these cycles, breaking out of these systems, breaking out of these ideas and concepts that keep us limited in scope. And so now we've got this divine masculine in need of healing. And we can see it. We can see what's happening. So rather than being external in the world and saying, I'm going to go fix all the men, I'm going to go solve the loneliness problem, and I'm going to do all the, and I'm going to fix all the men. No, what am I doing? For me, because as within, so without, as above, so below, what I'm doing within myself is healing my divine masculine. I've spent the last 6 years, like we were talking about, first of all, exploring these concepts, but second of all, really working on my divine feminine and understanding that for myself. And now it's time for me to loop back in my divine masculine and to hold both in a space of integrity and healing and unconditional love, so that I can show up in the world as a representation of, to the best of my ability, to the highest of my extent of healing, what it looks like to be embodied in these energies as much as possible. Now, I am also still human, right? And so my human gets taken out. Like, just 2 weeks ago, I was having a very wounded feminine moment, and I was questioning life, and I was being really needy, and I was being really feeling victimized and feeling very powerless. It's easy to fall back into those energies, because if you, again, look at the world around you, that's where the world currently is trying to keep us while we are expanding beyond. And so all of that to say, right now, I personally feel at this very critical point where turning within, holding within as much as possible, both of these energies, recognizing that there is nothing wrong with either one of these energies. We're not saying, we're stopping with the vilification. We're stopping with the victimization. We're stopping with the blaming and shaming and guilting and all of that. As much as possible, stop all that. It's not helping, and it's not moving us forward. That's the old energy. Taking an inward approach and saying, hey, what do I need? How can I be tender to myself right now? Where am I feeling scared? Where am I feeling wounded? Where am I feeling like I need a little bit of extra love or a little bit of extra attention? And just staying there in that energy for as long as I can to take care of myself, so that, again, I'm presenting from, I'm coming from, and I'm showing up in the world in my fully embodied integrity of my energy, which includes the masculine, the feminine, and everything on the spectrum in between.
Thank you. And very well said. And I think that's just such an important point that we want to keep coming back to, is that we all contain both energies. We're not here to bash men or the masculine. We are saying that for too long we allowed the wounded masculine to be dominant. And I think in our society right now, we're seeing the backlash that we are in the effort to strip women of rights and to demonize LGBTQ people, especially non-binary transgender people, because the wounded masculine is afraid of losing power and having a wounded feminine come in and just reverse roles and be the dominant, be the abusive one. And what we really need is for all of us, as Katie said, to do our own inner healing work so that we are coming from a place of unified divine and masculine energy, so that we are able to do the inner work, trust our intuition again, love ourselves again from a place of the divine feminine, but then turn that outward and use that same kind of loving energy to do research into these issues, to write books about them, to have conversations about them, to fully include men. I know a lot of men who have done their own inner healing work and who are wonderful at being sensitive, who aren't afraid to cry in public. But they also had to go through this inner healing work of self-love that isn't talked about as often for men. There's still more of a stigma for men to seek mental health services, for example, or even to just express their emotions in any form, crying at a sad movie, you know, anything in public. And I want to read something briefly. This is from Megan Watterson's The Divine Feminine Oracle deck. And I got that after reading her book about Mary Magdalene, which is really, as I said before, fascinating. I highly recommend it. But she writes, I have long believed that there is a connection between our ideas of the divine and the status of women. If the divine is understood to be exclusively male and is referred to only as the father, then men and the masculine are of higher stature, while women and the feminine are valued as less than. This imbalance harms us all. And that's an important point, too. It may seem like the divine masculine, as long as it's in control and has the power to dominate others, that side, if you will, is winning and is great for the masculine. But in reality, men are just as harmed by the imbalance as women are. I can remember as a child, my brother being told, boys don't cry from a young age. And that is every bit as wounding to a child as a female being told that, you know, you're too emotional, therefore you're not qualified for any kind of leadership role, or you're not allowed to be in certain professions because those are a man's job. And again, it's a both and thing.
If I may, I'm going to jump in on
Yes.
that because I think that you just raised a really important point about our men right now. Is that I think that right now our men are in a double bind, right? Women have been in a double bind, like, you know, where the too much, too not enough, the you know, all of those things that we women, we can say, yep, I've been there, I've been there. But what I haven't seen a lot of is spaces where men can actually go and be in touch with their feminine, where they're not called exactly what you said, right? Where we've created a condition where our men have no place to go to actually understand their own feminine, and they've been habitually over time from the beginning stripped of their feminine, which strips and shamed for it, and violence against their feminine, which has a practical real world application, right? What that does is that actually turns men against their mothers. If you think about it, what we're asking our boys and men to do is disavow their own mother, the qualities of their mother that exists within them. So we're teaching our men from very young ages that they need to hate their mothers because the qualities that they see of their mothers represented in them, they have been told to disavow. You're too sensitive. Stop crying. Men are weak, or women are weak. Pussy. That, you know, don't be a pansy. All these things that are associated to being a woman. So we have taken our men and we have said, we want you to love the women, right? You're supposed to love the women, right? Like you're supposed to go out and you're supposed to be the provider and you're supposed to procreate and you're supposed to do all this and you're supposed to love all the women, but you can't love the woman inside of you. You
Yeah.
can't love the feminine inside of you. You can't love the qualities within you that feel soft, that feel delicate, that feel afraid, because that is you acting as a woman when it's not. That is you acting as you, embodied in your traits that half came from your mother, half came from your father. You are the living existence of all of that, and their ancestral DNA, ancestor, right, all the way back to the beginning of time. And if you want to start time at Adam and Eve, I don't, but if you want to start it there, great, all the way back to the beginning of time, where our lineage has included these qualities that are, we haven't figured out yet a way to procreate. We're not hermaphroditic frogs. We are humans that need humans to procreate, right? So we need to be combining these energies to co-create within these spaces, within these fields. And for too long, we've been told that creating from one set of energy, i.e., the feminine, is unallowable. And that has not only taken all people who exist within feminine bodies, female bodies, as well as people who exist within non-traditional bodies or bodies that express middle sex characteristics of both genitalias. We've taken all of those people, lumped them into one, and said, you guys are shit. We hate you. We're going to vilify you. We're going to beat you, but we want to put you on a pedestal of property and ownership and you know, artistry. Like you're something to be looked at and admired, not something to actually be present and real in the world.
And I would say that in addition to teaching men to hate their mothers and that part of them within, it also teaches them to hate their wives or their partners who are female.
Yes.
And it's very hard to have a healthy marriage when one person is supposedly always supposed to be the dominant one, to make all of the major decisions, to be the one who is the provider, even though it's the norm now and financial necessity for most couples is that both are working full time. There's still the mindset that the man's job is more important. If we're going to relocate, it's going to be for the man's job. And I can attest from personally from my husband when he was unemployed, that was such a blow to his sense of being a good male, if you will, of being masculine in the way that men are supposed to be. And we see that so often with, you know, the extreme, of course, is like domestic violence, marital rape. But there's this segment of the male population that is so bought into the wounded masculine, the whole alpha male idea, and that reacts defensively whenever it's challenged, that we have gotten to the place that we are now. And the way back, as we're trying to emphasize, is not to just reverse roles and okay, let's put women in all the leadership roles and let women decide everything. No, the idea is that both men and women are capable of embodying both qualities. We have both qualities within us. And originally those qualities were not wounded. Life happened and wounded them, but it's possible and it's our responsibility then to work on our own healing so that we are able to embody both in healthy ways. And that's equally true of men and women. And it's just the key to everything. If you look at what's happening in our society now, it seems so obvious that what's happening politically and globally, with the rise of authoritarian regimes and with the attempts to subjugate women, get them back in line, keep them from voting, perhaps, reinforce the idea that women must be mothers to have any value, essentially, and must be good housewives, cooks, cleaning, etc., childcare. And it's a double bind for men as much as it is for women, as we've been saying. And these qualities, our society has segmented them into traditional gender roles, but that was never the intent. That it's impossible to have a healthy relationship and by extension, a healthy society if we are cutting off uh, one half of ourselves, essentially.
Yeah. And I want to also iterate the the internalized misogyny and misandry. The internalized, I hate women, I hate men. We've all internalized that too, right? So it, I did have to sit with the ways that I was showing up in the world in hatred of men, right? From my own experiences, from the ways that I've been raised, for the ways that I've been acculturated, I did have to sit with some of that. My son, right? Like my son actually called me out on it. He was what, 22ish at the time, and he's like, I really need to call you out on some of the ways that you're treating me. And at first I'm like, right? And then I'm like, no, I'm going to embody what I preach, right? And I'm going to shut the fuck up. Sorry for language. Sorry. We should put the disclaimer at the beginning. I'm a sailor. It's okay. So I'm going to shut up. I'm going to listen, and I'm going to actually try to hear what he's saying to me. I'm going to actually try to find myself in his experience. And so I did, and I listened, and I was like, oh yeah, you know what, actually, like, and I had reasons for it, and I can give excuses for it, and I can tell you all the backstory about why it happened the way that it happened. But there were very, very real ways in which I raised my son from a very wounded positionality, both wounded masculine and wounded feminine. I entered into motherhood wounded. Okay. And I mothered from a wounded place because I didn't have the space, the time, the energy, the ability to heal. I didn't have the resources and supports that I have now at this point in time in my life to have healed. My good friend and mentor, Danae, hadn't written her book about the masculine and feminine and how to live within those energies healthfully yet. I hadn't experienced any of that. So I just had to go through life trying to minimize the amount of wounding I was doing while still recognizing that I was being wounding. And then processing all the shame and the guilt and the blame and everything else that I felt because I wasn't a better wife. I wasn't a better mother. I wasn't good enough. I had to work full time outside of the house. So that meant I was a terrible mother because I couldn't be with my kids. And then, but I'm working full time so I could support my kids. So doesn't that make me a good mother because I'm working and I'm providing? What? Like, and I spent 22 years in that rigmarole. I spent all this time trying to figure it out. And again, going through all of these avenues and pathways that have been available to me that really weren't serving me or helping me feel good about being an embodied person on the planet, right? They just made me feel worse about myself and made me feel like I was still the problem. I was still doing something wrong. If I only took this pill or this cream or this potion or this, whatever it was, some externalized factor that could make me somehow better.
And I want to jump in here because another piece that's key that you touched on earlier when you mentioned that you were raised Catholic and then you decided to just believe nothing. There are so many people who reach a point who are raised in a very patriarchal, hierarchical religious system who say, no, this isn't for me. And therefore I'm not a spiritual person at all. There is no divine being because this God in the sky that rules over everybody and then says men are supposed to rule over women. I don't want any part of that bullshit. I'm done with that. Yeah. But unfortunately, what ends up happening then for so many of us is we say, okay, then I'm done with spirituality, period, because I'm not religious, therefore I'm not actually spiritual. I don't want to believe in this male God, so I'm not going to believe in any kind of divine force, being, whatever you want to call it, higher power. And that's another great loss. And when we're able to recognize the feminine as truly divine in the same way that the masculine is, then we don't need this external male savior. We have both divine feminine and the divine feminine as co-equals. We can honor Mary Magdalene just as we honor Jesus. We can read her gospel. We can acknowledge how she was sent by Jesus to teach the male disciples. without discounting her or discrediting her or all the other thousands of women throughout history. We always talk about the founding fathers. What about the founding mothers?
Right.
Or with religion too, it's the same way. Almost all of them have a male founding figure that becomes the one that is worshipped or at least revered, looked up to as wise. And so until we can see both as divine, then we're always going to be stuck in this pattern of, okay, there's this hierarchy. First there's God, then there's man, then there's woman, then there's children, then there's animals below that. And so it's totally okay for the man to rule over all of those other categories, right? And so we
The
also get
man
in
given dominion. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But I want to shift and focus more on the positive. I have this Divine Feminine oral deck and Divine Feminine Oracle deck, and Katie has a Divine Masculine one for today that we've gotten out. And so we're each going to draw a card and share what it says to give you a sense of embodying both the Divine Masculine and the Divine Feminine. So mine is the Divine Feminine Oracle deck, and I showed it earlier. It is put out by Megan Watterson, the same author of Mary Magdalene Revealed and The Girl Who Baptized Herself. And anyway, this card is the Cosmic Egg, and it represents the Divine Feminine overall. It's not a specific being like her other cards in the deck are. The message is, I hold the universe within me. I am the force of an ever-expanding love. And in the little guidebook that goes along with it, some of what she says is, the cosmic egg is the core symbol of the Divine Feminine's creative force. It is a spiritual motif found in the creation myths of countless cultures and civilizations. It represents birth, a new beginning, or an expansion of life. In the Rig Veda, one of the oldest texts in any Indo-European language, the cosmos is described as a golden egg-shaped womb. The entire universe is said to have emerged from it. In Greek mythology, the Orphic egg hatched the primordial hermaphroditic deity, who then created all the gods and goddesses. It is depicted as an egg with a serpent wrapped around it. In Egyptian, Chinese, and Polynesian mythologies, among many others, creation begins with an egg. And in the Christian tradition, Mary Magdalene used the egg to describe how life begins again after death. And that story is not in the Bible, but you can read about it in Mary Magdalene Revealed and other non-biblical sources. But in modern cosmology, even today, it's believed that 13 billion years ago, the entire mass of the universe was compressed into a gravitational singularity, the so-called cosmic egg. And from that singularity, the universe has expanded ever since to its current state and continues to expand. And so the message of this egg is that everything is as it should be, that you hold the universe within you, that all life emerges from within. And again, this is not just literally a female giving birth to a child. This is men giving birth to new careers, to creative projects, to whatever it might be. But if you try to exert pressure for something to exist before it's ready, that new life within you won't have the time to fully form. The cosmic egg is the essence of the Divine Feminine, the ultimate symbol of the creative force that exists within all of us. It's the dark, loving womb that holds and protects all creative expressions of life. If we allow what's within us to emerge in divine timing, in kairos or soul time, then what's within will transform us. The egg is the trust that what's ours can never be taken from us. So there's no need to answer the ego's push to rush the process, to impress others, or to complete something on someone else's timeline. The egg is the faith that our process is sacred, that even in the midst of what looks like chaos or delay or even death, there's a tendril of new life that needs only our trust to eventually take form. And the egg is the knowing that life begins again after death from within. And I think that's just such a powerful reminder that we all exist in cycles of death and rebirth, and that we are all have that creativity within us, that impulse to bring something new and meaningful into the world. And when it gets wounded, it comes out in unhealthy ways through the ego of just pushing, wanting to be number one, wanting to be recognized as the founder of a company. And again, that's not inherently bad. It becomes wounded when it becomes all about domination and subjugation instead of about each of us equally contributing what we are meant to bring to the world. And with that, Katie, I'll let you talk more about the masculine card.
Yeah, before I read through the card that I drew, I just want to I love that concept, and I love the divine, the egg, and that juiciness that exists within. We're all here to create, but we're creating from within this body, right? And again, that's bringing in, again, this concept of this internal, this concept of this, you can't see it, you can't touch it, it's mysterious, it's unknown, it doesn't have form yet. And I have to work with that energy, not push it too hard, not, manipulate it in any kind of way, just allow it to grow and expand and do its thing. And to know that it's going to do that in its own timing, in its own way. Right. And so I can plan, I can put the linear structure together, I can put the blueprint and the this and the that, and that's that masculine energy, which we need. But then the building has to happen, the assembly has to happen, the process of creation has to happen, and that is non-linear. And it's this energy of just like, sometimes it looks chaotic before it takes form, and it's one of those things that's just like, wow, okay. So now we're gonna take into this divine masculine, and I'm going to be reading from the Divine Masculine Healing Oracle, and this is by Christabel Jessica. Okay, and the card that I pulled for today's conversation, and I'm going to apologize in advance for my pronunciation of anything because my tongue is white and it doesn't do spicy very well. The Ruamako, right? Ruamako. How do we say that, Wendy?
Ruamako.
Ruamako. The card for this is: awakening requires relinquishing how you have viewed truth and reality in the past. As you go through this process, allow the people around you to do so too. Ruamako is a central figure in Maori mythology. He is the god of earthquakes, associated with volcanoes and the seasons. Combining the forces of his parents, Ranginyu, I'm sorry guys, Skyfather, and Papatuanuku, Earth Mother. Ruamako is believed to be the cause of the change of seasons and responsible for all disruptions beneath the earth. Before his birth, his brothers were tired of living in the dark void between their parents, the sky and the earth, and desperately desired space and sunshine. With their combined force, the brothers broke free, upsetting their parents so much that Ranginyu flooded the world with his tears. While still in his mother's womb at this time, Ruamako tried to escape, his movements creating earthquakes for the first time. And Ruamako's message for us of healing. Spiritual awakening paints a picture of softly waking up to chirping birds, wrapped in cozy blankets, ready to live a beautiful new day. It can be more akin to an obnoxious alarm forcing you out of bed from a tranquil slumber. Whether a lovely experience or a jarring force, you can be left overwhelmed, deeply unsure of yourself and the world. Staying in a dreamlike state is blissful compared to the deep excavation it takes to face the harshness of truth. To awaken, you will question the very fabric of your reality. Spiritual awakenings are unique to the individual, sometimes coming on slowly, while other times brought on by a catalytic event, a near-death experience, paranormal or psychic connection, health issues, a relationship, or parenthood are some forms of catalysts. The catalysts shake you to your core, leaving you questioning the meaning behind existence. This can be a painful experience. Awakening can feel like you and your inner belief system are being ripped wide open, peeled back, and sometimes scraped away. If someone you are close to does not awaken, heal, and process like you do, it doesn't mean they aren't. Feminine energy tends to awaken via intuition, receptivity, and processing through discussion. Masculine energy is inclined to awaken in a somatic, visceral way through the physical body. Regardless of the gender, everyone does it differently. It is important to honor the energetic processes that work for you and, on the other hand, may not work for others. The most efficient teacher of all is experiencing for oneself. We become our own cautionary tale, learning from our past mistakes, not those of others. The more we feel the narrative of another pushed onto us, the more we want to dig in our heels to resist the pressure. Allow others the room to figure out what their journey means to them while putting your focus back on what you value and how you choose to spend your precious time and energy. You may grow apart from some people, jobs, and other elements of your life, and that's okay. Venture forth with the freedom to awaken and grow in your unique direction, and you will find yourself surprised by how much your life changes for the better.
Thank you for that. And I think that's so powerful to emphasize the part that the healing journey is different for each of us. And practices like meditation may work wonderfully for some people, may not for others. I have ADHD, so traditional meditation forms in terms of being still and just watching the thoughts float on by and not getting carried away with them. That doesn't work for me at all. But walking as a meditative practice works wonderfully. Journaling works wonderfully for me. Um, and so whenever we try to force ourselves into any kind of mold, we diminish our capacity for healing. And also, whenever we outsource our power, our decision making ability to some other spiritual guru or therapist or a coach who has all the answers, supposedly, and if you just do what they do and believe what they believe, then suddenly your life's going to be perfect. I have never known that to work. I'll just put it that way. There is no other person who can heal me. It's up to me to heal myself. Now, with that said, obviously, I offer coaching. I write and speak about spiritual things, not because I have all the answers, far from it. I am very upfront about recovery is an ongoing journey, and I don't think any human ever reaches a fully enlightened state where they never have doubts or problems in their life ever again. I can be a helpful guide to someone, a supportive presence, encouraging them to rely on their own inner compass, but I can't be that compass for them. And I think there's so much damage being done, and we're seeing it start to come out with, the worst examples being like clergy sexual abuse or Deepak Chopra being found in the Epstein files, et cetera, et cetera. But whenever we completely outsource our power and look to anyone else of any gender, of any background, to be the answer person for our life that's going to fix us, that's just not how it works.
Yeah, and I that's so powerful, and it really gives a lot of words and meaning to my own spiritual awakening, my own spiritual evolution, right? Like, I talked about having turned away from the church at a very, very young age, but still going to church long after I had turned away from it because I didn't have choice in that, right? Like that was the school I went to, that was the expectations of my youth, right? But I did make the choice not to get confirmed into a religion that I didn't believe into. And what you were saying about having turned away from spirituality, like I exactly that. I was like, okay, well, this spirituality doesn't work for me. This religion doesn't work for me. I'm not a religious person. And I didn't, full on atheist, like no spirituality, no beliefs, no, not right. Like, duh. And then I started learning about these more feminine principles, these more feminine dynamics. I started learning from amazing teachers like Dr. Clara Zammit, Danae Logan, oh my gosh, Sonia Renee Brown, Sonia Renee Taylor, Adrienne Marie Brown, like all these different amazing leaders all at the same time, like just started coming in and like giving me all this different perspective. So then I started leaning into things that interested me about what were spiritual, right? So I started leaning into things like astrology. I started leaning into things like the oracle cards. I started leaning into these other ways of relating to what is spiritual and coming up with my own definition, my own understanding, my own way of navigating the spiritual. I still consider myself an atheist. I don't believe in any one particular God or any God that exists, right? I believe in the stories, the mythologies, the archetypes, the meaning that we get out of looking at these belief systems as incredibly invaluable, incredibly potent, and incredibly healing and helpful. Because the purpose, in my opinion, of spirituality is connection, is connecting ourselves to ourselves in deeper, even more understood ways, and connecting us to the external world, everything that exists without, right? So it exists within, it exists without, it's that connection. It exists above, it exists below, it's that connection. And so for me, spirituality has really taken on, how am I connecting? How am I relating? How am I showing up within myself? And then how is myself going out into the world and showing up? And like what you were talking about with, I can't sit on a couch to meditate for, like, I mean, that really wasn't accessible to me because of my own neurodivergence, because of my own ways of needing to relate to my spirituality. And so I had to use things like tapping. I had to use things like chanting. I had to use things like music. I had to use walking and being in nature and all of these other ways of relating to that which is inspiring of awe, inspiring of connection, inspiring of wonderment, inspiring of joy, inspiring of my own sovereignty, my own divinity that allows me to show up in the world in integrity to the highest degree that I can, to the extent of the healing that I have been fortunate enough to have been allowed at this point, and have gone within, gone into those places of spiritual awakening, and then turned that around. And then this is, again, calling in, pulling in from that divine feminine energy, right? And then transmuting, translating, transferring through my being into the outward expression of what my spirituality is, of how I show up in the world, of what I create in the world. And so some of the things that I'm working on creating in the world right now that feel big and scary and tender and a little bit emotional, I'm working on publishing my first book. And if the world and the universe all align with me, it will be released on July 1st. It's called Dearest Beloved Katie, Letters from My Future Self. So there's no place for you to go to find that yet, because I haven't made it yet. It's still juicing in there, right? Like, it's still being created. I have a plan. I have a structure for it. I have support through it, but it's still in process, right? And you can find me on the Substack at Dearest Beloved Katie. That is also brand new and is emerging as we are doing this process. Other places you can find me, I'm going to be hosting a book club starting in May, on May 7th. You can sign up for that. We're going to be reading the book The Joy Reset by Mary Catherine McDonald. You can go to onegirlstanding.com/events and register over there. We'll be meeting on Thursday nights starting May 7th. And just keep looking for me. I'm leaning into the embodiment of my hermit. And so you'll find me before I find you. We'll keep going. It'll be fine. But those are some of the ways that, like, I'm starting to lean into my own spiritual practice, even in these greater ways, in these more external and tangible ways out into the world. So that's the way that I'm combining these deep feminine experiences of myself into the masculine expression out into the world.
And I went ahead and typed in the chat onegirlstanding.com/events. That is the site to sign up for Katie's book club. And actually, that will be the site to sign up for a book club that I will be doing after Katie finishes hers, on Dr. Gabor Mate's book, The Myth of Normal, which talks about healing despite our toxic culture, essentially. Highly recommended read. All of his books actually are fantastic. For me, as someone with ADHD, his book, The Scattered Mind or Scattered Minds, was immensely helpful as well. Also, as I mentioned earlier, I offer one-to-one coaching via Zoom, and I do Zoom groups periodically. Probably this summer, I'll be offering again my spiritual support for weary souls group. I may give it a different name, but the concept is the same. We spend 1 week looking at spiritual practices, 1 week at spiritual experiences, 1 week spiritual places, 1 week spiritual role models. You get the idea. And so it's more of a discussion group than a course. I do present some information, but I limit it to a small group so that it can get deeply personal. We can really get to know each other and talk about our spirituality. And in the last group, I had a pagan, a witch, an atheist.
Me.
So yes, Katie was in the group, and she wrote me a glowing testimonial that I'm very grateful for. But yeah, so that's the kind of thing that I think we're both leaning into, is just embrace your authentic spirituality, whatever it is. And if you don't have any idea what it is because you haven't allowed yourself to be open to the possibility that you might be spiritual, that's totally okay too. Just come and listen to what other people believe and see if any of it resonates with you or with their practices or their experiences. I've talked about, my spiritual experiences at Bruce Springsteen concerts, or walking at the park and just gazing into the eyes of a great blue heron. There are all kinds of ways. The other link I'll put in the chat, I have created a self-love ebook PDF download that I created a simple bit.ly link to remember it. It's just bit.ly/mylovebook. And one of the practices in it is definitely a spiritual practice. If you're familiar with Elizabeth Gilbert's Letters from Love, it's basically the same as that. Something that I was doing before she was here on Substack with her wonderful community that I'm also part of. But it's about, channeling that divine wisdom that we do have, our whether you consider it your intuition or some external force or some combination of the two. It's literally asking that wisdom, that love, what would you have me know or do, and just channeling it and writing it out. I also talk about EFT tapping in the self-love workbook as another practice that's very helpful, which Katie mentioned too. That is both great for mental health, for releasing anxiety, but also just as a spiritual practice, a grounding practice. And I see we're already getting close to the 1 hour mark where we usually wrap things up. Any last thoughts that you'd like to share, Katie?
Well, the thing I would really like to share is that, and it's going to be a plug for you, right? It's going to be a plug for your spiritual group. When you launch that again, I highly recommend everybody sign up for it and do it. Having a place to speak about my spirituality is why I'm able to sit here in front of you having this conversation today. Like, having a safe place where I could go and actually be witnessed in my curiosity, my questing, and my questioning, as well as the things that I was starting to embrace, and having places to go to express that and to be seen and witnessed and held in it, and also to be validated in the expression of spirituality that exists outside of a mainstream norm construct. And that 6-week experience and everything that has blossomed out of that 6-week experience has absolutely shifted my life, shifted my perspective, shifted my ability to be here, even having this conversation, because it gave me, for the first time, a place to go where I wasn't just being preached at, lectured to, told what to believe and how to believe it. And if I didn't believe it or feel it that way, then there was something wrong with me. It gave me this ability to really get in touch with and in tune with not only what is me, but to see other people in practice.
Oh, Katie just froze up, but Thank you so much, Katie, for saying that. And again, I will probably offer it again this summer. I'm looking at some possible June dates now. If that spirituality group sounds like something that would interest you, we do it via Zoom, and it's usually like a 6-week thing. Um, Please DM me on Substack, or once I publish this post, leave a comment if you're interested, just so I know that, and we can possibly even talk about, okay, which days and times would you be available? I deliberately limit that group to a relatively small number of people. Last time I limited it to 12, just to ensure that everyone has time for sharing. Um, and obviously, Katie had internet issues or something. I'm sorry that she had to cut off early, but now is quitting time, as we say. We've been here for an hour, so thank you so much to all who have been here with us or will be watching or listening to this later. And again, you can DM me on Substack, or leave a note in the comments if you are interested in finding out more about the 6-week spirituality group that I'll be offering again this summer. And thanks so much for being here. And I will also be doing a live as a guest of Andy, the highly sensitive woman Substack creator, where I'll be talking more about my journaling and practice and writing practices. And that will be on next Tuesday, the 14th. So maybe I'll see some of you there for that as well. But again, thanks for being here with me. And I hope you've enjoyed the conversation as much as Katie and I have. Bye.